Dutton.
Here.
Alquist. Ashburn.
Present.
DeSaulnay. Huff.
Here.
Leno.
Here.
Lou is absent. Lowenthal. Maldonado. Negretti McLeod. Padilla. Semidian.
Here.
Walters absent. And Wright.
He said he'd be about 15 minutes away.
7, 8. Okay, he was here and then he left.
Right.
We'll see what we do. Okay. We may have to hold some items and put them on call for some of the members who are not present yet to make sure. So every item, members, here's where we have a relatively short calendar. It is essentially a vote-only calendar. And because all of these items have been heard, with the minor exception, I think, at the end, and we'll ask DOF to present on that. This is also an opportunity, members, at the end of this calendar for some additional proposals that have surfaced during the time since we've been having all the hearings to be surfaced and for possible vote tomorrow. We do expect to meet tomorrow for purposes of public and members upon adjournment of session in the Senate. We expect to meet again tomorrow and try to get a little more of what we can in this immediate February special session. So with that, I would just start on page, wherever we are, 3, because that's where the items are. I would ask as we, go ahead, whoever needs to be here, get here. I'm not sure we're going to ask you a lot of questions. We've heard most of these issues. Unless members have a specific question for finance or LAO on a specific item, we'll kind of move through this relatively quickly. I will ask mostly for objection to things, or if people want to be kept off of a roll, so that we can, but we will have to add up and make sure we have at least 8 folks, so we may have to hold some of these over as we go. On call, basically, until other members show up, depending on how it goes. But if you have questions, feel free to ask. And if not, we'll just kind of move expeditiously. All right, the first item, delay the conservatorship and guardianship program for about the 4th time, unfortunately. Is there any objection to approving that delay? Hearing none, the roll right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Do you want
7,
to take an
8?
initial roll call to establish what we got?
Oh, let's do that. Okay.
All right. Ducheney.
Aye.
Dutton.
Aye.
Alquist. Aye. Ashburn.
Aye.
DeSaulnay. Huff.
Aye.
Leno.
Aye.
Lowenthal. Maldonado. Negretti McLeod. Padilla. Semidian. Walters. Wright.
Okay.
6.
That measure has 9 votes.
Yes.
It is approved, but we will leave it on call for members who may appear later. Okay. The Department of Justice DNA penalty assessment increase and expansion of fund usage. You're a no. Senator Huff? You're a no. You're an aye. You're a no. You're a no. Who else is here? Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn's a no. Okay, so that would have present company. Anybody else? Okay, 6 to 3. That will be on call. Needs 2 more votes to get out of, to be added to the package, as it were. Shift of tribal gaming funds. This is the one on the transportation funds that we heard the other day, members. The existing funds that go there, it allows this money to be used to assist with debt reduction, I think, as part of general fund relief. Any objections to including this one in our February special session package? Hearing none. 9 to 0 on call. Okay, page 4, members, this question of a reduction to the Department of Fish and Game, the suggested motion is not precisely to approve the governor's proposal, but to approve a reduction of $5 million general fund to the department with the detail of which programs to be affected and how that $5 million might best be taken, deferred for subcommittee discussion. It is a budget year reduction in any case, and we'd like to discuss the detail more. There was a lot of concern, I think, at the committee, at the time it was heard with respect to which programs would be affected and why, and, whether there are other areas for consideration. Senator Dutton?
Yeah, I don't have any problem looking at it, but we do have some concerns because right now Fish and Game is actually underfunded for the programs and the projects that we have assigned them, and there are some activities right now that I have some deep concern about that are taking resources away from their regular duties. And so I do think it needs to be looked at. I'm not going to support a reduction at this time because I do think we're drastically underfunded with regards to game wardens and other people, but I don't have any strong objection to your recommended course of action. But I do hope the subcommittee does take a look at some of the other activities that they're engaged in that really are not part of their primary mission at this time.
So is that being recorded as a not voting or as
a no vote in my case? Yeah.
As a no? Okay. Senator Huff, a no. Senator Ashburn? Ashburn, aye. Okay. That would be 7-2 on call. State Water Resources Control Board. This is the trailer bill language that allows the department to conforms to federal law, basically, and allows us to do grants that ARA funding allows us to do, I think.
Madam Chair?
Senator Leno, sorry.
I would ask the committee's support in passing on this issue until tomorrow. There are some stakeholder meetings going on today discussing a couple of unresolved issues.
Okay. We'll just hold that one over till tomorrow. There's apparently discussion on whether we ought to recommend formulas for the grants. I think not formulas, but priorities. Is that the issue? Yeah. I think the question of giving grant authority is not at issue, but whether there ought to be guidelines that go with it is what's out there. Page 5, the delay in Medi-Cal check write, painful, not pretty. But it's my understanding, if somebody down there at the table doesn't tell me different, that the department already has this authority. No trailer bill language is needed. The possible delay would be from June 15th to July 1, and only if it's really necessary. Is that correct, Finance?
Madam Chair, John Wunderlich with the Department of Finance. It's correct that trailer bill language is not needed for this delay. However, we're still looking at some potential impacts at the end of the budget year related to ARA funding that could result, and so we're still working to quantify those and would ask for flexibility to come back to the committee once we have that information available.
Absolutely, and I think, it can come back to this. This is late enough in the year that we can do something in sub or in committee before June if we have to. This just acknowledges that you have the authority to do this should you feel the need to do it. It doesn't, and the savings that would be associated with it if you do. Is that Senator Huff?
Yeah. How much money, do we have a penalty on this if we take this action?
Well, that's the question, I think, right?
Yes, it would save about $94 million in the current year with about a $38 million penalty in the beginning of the budget year. And what we're still trying to evaluate is to what extent there may be a penalty at the end of the budget year. And once we have that quantified, we may come back with a revised proposal.
So we're going to hold this.
Well, we were going to score it as possible. It is kind of ugly. This is the one where the interest is more. But is there any effort being made to try to avoid the penalty in some fashion? Is there a hope for that, I suppose?
There's no ability to avoid the penalty if we do delay payment.
Well, it seems to me, Madam Chair, that this isn't a real savings anyway. Is it in this budget you're shifting something into another reporting period, and so you're not really saving, but we are having a real penalty. Isn't that
Yeah.
correct?
Essentially, what's happening is this is similar to the proposal that was adopted to delay the state payroll to July 1st, so it's something that you would have to continue indefinitely to maintain the one-time savings, and there would be the one-time penalty at the beginning of budget year. That is a real penalty, yes.
Right. With the payroll illustration, there was no penalty. It was just a budget gimmick. This has the gimmick with a penalty almost half as much as what you're theoretically deferring, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Can't support that one.
Senator Wright?
For clarification, the $94 million is what you would save. The penalty comes out of what?
The penalty would come in the budget year, and the result of the penalty is that for a period of about a week, we would be out of compliance with the federal stimulus prompt payment requirements, and so for about a week, we would not be able to achieve that enhanced funding.
Okay, but I'm just trying to do this simple. So the $94 million you'd save in the budget year.
Correct.
The $38 million comes from where?
That would be a cost in the budget year.
Okay, so you could, in effect, subtract the 38 from the 94.
Correct.
So that the actual savings wouldn't be 94, but it would be 94 minus the 38.
It would be about $55 million.
Gotcha. Now, the 162 below that, what is that?
That would be the federal funding piece.
So we would give that up as well.
That's what would happen is in the current year, the federal funds associated with the $94 million general fund is the $162 million.
Right.
And then in the budget year, there would be then the $38.5 million penalty.
Okay. I think
Can't find a better way to save money? This is the governor's proposal.
So again, so I'm clear, the 162 is 162 million in federal dollars that we would be sending back in effect.
No, we just would not achieve those.
Oh, you just wouldn't get it?
We just wouldn't receive those federal funds until we make the payment, which would be delayed for a week. So we would essentially receive those funds the next week when we make the payment.
So this 162 represents a 7-day loss in funds. It doesn't represent an actual loss.
Correct.
Oh,
The
okay.
funds are just received a week later.
I'm just saying that wasn't clear from what I was reading.
Oh, yeah, that
The
is
penalty
confusing.
represents a loss.
Yeah, the 38 million is a straight up, we ain't getting that back, but you will get the
You basically take it
162
out,
back
162.
at a later date.
Correct.
7 days.
Comes out.
Correct.
Okay.
We're out of here.
Madam Chair.
So the net savings really would be the 55 that you described?
Correct.
As opposed to the 94. Gotcha. Okay. I'm sorry.
Senator Huff.
Yeah, it's really not a real savings. I just want to drive that point home because I've heard this group talk about leaving federal money on the table before. This is the flip side of that same coin, because we're going to get penalized by the federal government because we haven't spent this money properly. So we have a bogus savings. We're just shifting it into another month and therefore into another year, but we're taking a real hit of about half of the amount that we're theoretically saving, which isn't a savings.
So the 94 should really be 55.
Correct. But it's money you're losing. You're giving up money to do this little papered over fix for a short period of time. You're taking money out of the system at the end of the day, not improving anything.
I see. You push it into the next year forever. That's where your savings is?
Correct.
So it's not really savings, it's just deferral.
Yeah, I know. And then what? If someday we recover ourselves, do we get to kind of move it back or what? Or then it's on a schedule where then it's prompt when it's late?
That would certainly be something that could be considered once we're in a better fiscal situation.
And the other issue that you don't have clarified yet is whether we have another year of ERA funding and then we're in penalty again.
Right. So that's what we're trying to evaluate is what potential penalty may be involved, and then once we quantify that, then we may come forward with a revised proposal.
So it's very possible that you're losing half of your bookkeeping benefit, And at the end of the year, when we push it ahead, because that's the strategy here, we get hit again until the federal program stops occurring, right?
Right. So the idea is then if we would continue to get hit, then we may come forward with a revised proposal to avoid that.
Understand. Thank you.
All right, well,
One other
it's not...
question, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
sorry. Senator
LEO,
Dudley?
actually, I'm kind of curious because we've done this with other things. So what, is anybody keeping a score as to how much of these deferral we're doing? And so because this is just part of it. There's other things we've done, too, that have been ongoing now for the last couple of years where we keep kicking it down the road. So...
Sean Martin, Legislative Analyst's Office. Yes, we have delayed check writes before in order to reduce costs within the year that we delayed those check writes. I don't have a total for you of how much in delayed check writes is currently.
Could you kind of let me know later what the cumulative effect of this kind of practice is, where we're at? Because eventually there's got to be a day of reckoning. I mean, you can't keep kicking, keep rolling it over.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, here would be, as ugly as this is, bottom line, we are, by voting aye here, we are only recognizing the department has the authority to do this. There's nothing telling them they have to. If we can all find $55 million of a better way to do this, I think before then we'd all like to. And certainly if things get better, it would be one to pull back or not do or do something with. And I think some of the points that are being made are legitimate. But for the moment, I think it's not inappropriate, at least to clean up our decks, to score it. It's the governor's proposal. It's authority the governor already has. They can do it with or without us, and we might as well acknowledge the proposed savings. If there is a change in that finance as the things go and it becomes more costly, we would expect that to be brought forward in subcommittee and have opportunity to act on it differently there. Is that fair? On that basis only, members, I take it I had 3. Senator Ashburn is a no. We've got 3 no's and a lot of reluctant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Senator Lowenthal and Senator DeSaulnier having been added to the roll, we have 8 ayes. 8 reluctant ayes and 3 no's. Okay. That one, I think we still have a couple members out, so it'll still stay on call, although it is adopted. The Medi-Cal anti-fraud, the recommendation here is, as we discussed at the time, members, that we heard this, is to say, go forward, department, do all the anti-fraud activities that you think are priority, but no, you don't get the 38 new people. Any objection to that recommendation? Hearing none.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Again, if I may comment on this one, if we remove people from certain anti-fraud activities to other anti-fraud activities, then there will be activities where they are achieving savings that will no longer be performed. So it's our position that additional savings cannot be achieved without additional staff to conduct additional anti-fraud activities.
I would suggest that you don't need additional staff if you've decided at some point that a 3rd furlough day was unnecessary and people didn't need to be not work 2 months a year. I mean, we're back to that problem. You got people not working 2 months a year. You got 350 people in this department. In this section, you've got 700 people in this department. Nobody's convinced that you can't reallocate those 700 people in a way that does whatever the most effective anti-fraud activities are that are your priorities. Nobody's convinced that those 700 people aren't capable of doing that job. It's too many, I think.
Well,
Senator Dutton?
I'm looking at another thing. Currently, you have, roughly a little over 700 positions in the audit investigations branch, and you got over 370 of them are working in fraud and so forth. You mean to tell me they can't tighten their belt a little bit and do a little bit more investigative work? I'm getting tired of excuses, to be honest with you. Okay, I really want to see people start doing their job. And I'm not really worried about, I still don't believe if there's fraud going on, there's no reason why they can't be doing this work and doing it better. And how many vacancies do you have right now, by the way? That would be my question.
We can certainly report back on the number of vacancies.
Farrah Brock with the Legislative Analyst's Office. I talked to the department yesterday. They said they have a 10 to 11% vacancy within the fraud unit.
Well, then you fill your vacancies and you got your personnel.
That would be
to do
30
your work.
people, the way I count.
Yeah.
Done. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 to 0. right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 to 0. Leave that matter on call, but it's adopted. Sorry. Oh, is he here? Yeah, okay. That measure is adopted 10 to 0 and remains on call for members who arrive later. Okay, Department of Public Health, page 6. This is a technical funding shift of federal funds that are available and remain unspent that creates general fund savings by moving those federal funds to support the Office of AIDS.
Yeah, we're
Any
okay with
objection?
that. No.
Okay, hearing none. 10 to 0. Do I still have 10? No, 9. Oops, I'm at 9 to 0. Senator Alquist disappeared, right? Okay, 9 to 0. Measure is adopted, remains on call. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm still at 9, so it's okay. It's 9 to 0. I don't know. 4, 6, 8, 9. I got 9. So 9 to 0, adopted on call. Department of Developmental Services, probably the most painful recommendation on here, would be to continue the 3% reduction to the regional centers that has been in place during the current year. There clearly is not the resources this year to restore what ought to be their ongoing funding, but it's the existing state of affairs. It's basically retaining the status quo. Yeah, everybody up here, I think, is not happy with this, but it is what it is. 9 to 0 on call. Foster care funding, this is a federal, and there's trailer bill language the governor has proposed. I think there's some work going on between finance and LAO and staff just to reconcile and deal with any technical adjustments to that trailer bill language, but this would allow us to use this federal funds in a way that supports our foster care system. Hearing no objection, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 0 on call. That measure adopted, but remains on call. Senator Lowenthal, you want to be added to the roll on the foster care funding? Sorry, you just weren't there. So okay, that makes that 9 to 0. Sorry. Okay. California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, 3 savings proposals, member. Let's take the easy one first. Is there any objection to adopting the $811 million in savings that appears to be achievable from the health receivers?
Yeah, and I just have one question.
Yes, Senator Dutton.
We just received a deficiency letter for $400 million. So how are we going to? I mean, I'm going to vote for the 811 reduction, but I don't. We just got a deficiency request for $400 million. So I'm kind of curious how, if you're running deficiency, how you think you're going to get savings
from the receiver. Finance?
Zlatko Theorich, Department of Finance. I think the items that the receiver spoke to at the last hearing are the things that we need time to get our hands on in terms of achieving the savings. They hadn't implemented those yet, and so we think that by moving forward with some flexibilities and the types of things that they identified last time that we can.
The senator's question is not about the $800 million. Everybody's okay with that. The question is, given that there is now a deficiency apparently in the receiver's funding of $400 million, kind of we don't get everything that we'd like. Is that? I mean,
well, I'm just curious. So is this going to be a $1.2 million? So this deficiency gets eaten up, or are we still looking at a $400 million overrun, and therefore we're only really going to look at about a $411 million savings?
The governor's budget reconciled and reflected this current year expenditure already in the totals. So it's already reflected in part of the $19.9 billion problem that we're addressing through the 811.
So you'd already acknowledged the deficiency in January?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, doesn't make it prettier, but at least it's acknowledged. Okay, on that basis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is there, without objection, we'll adopt the $800 million savings, $811 million savings associated with the receiver's proposals. Trailer bill, I think, to follow. As the receiver develops those proposals, we expect to see them in subcommittee and such or somewhere. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. That would be 9-0, and that measure will remain on call. Now, the juvenile justice population management, issue 1 under the same section. This was the one, member, that we discussed that had a lot of component parts to it. I think the language we'd be suggesting today is pretty open. I'm reasonably convinced they can achieve this level of savings in the Department of Juvenile Justice. Whether we would actually, well, one piece of their proposal is something they can do on their own, which is this time credits issue. So, I mean, that's achievable. I think, at least, let's just get a sense from members, I don't think there was huge objection to the notion that 18-year-olds, the M cases can be transferred, and if that's going to need a statutory language, that's what it is. I think, though, and it doesn't. Okay. So the 18-year-olds, we expect, as part of this, that the 18-year-olds will be transferred to adult facilities when they turn 18. If they were convicted as adults, not if they were convicted at 7, but if they were convicted as adults, that and they're what are called M cases, that they can be transferred at 18 to adult institutions. The more problematic piece that I think probably still needs some work, and perhaps in subcommittee is where that can be worked out, is this question of the 21 to 25. I think whether it's prospective based on conviction, whether it's prospective based on I turned 21, some of those issues, and at least my sense from the department, I wasn't clear that everybody knew how much savings you get for what. But clearly, in the Department of Juvenile Justice, which is spending way too much money on everybody, we would hope that they can achieve $48 million in savings through any number of management techniques. But I think what we're not giving today is explicit trailer bill on the 21 to 25 issues, because that one is, I think it's just got too many moving parts, and I'm not sure it's been clarified yet. Is that a fair description of the world?
Yeah, we're comfortable. I think most of us are comfortable with on the Republican side, to transfer the 18-year-olds to the adult facilities. I'm just not aware, can't support some of the other early release provisions that may take effect here, though. So I'd be voting no on that particular issue.
Okay, just no on the whole issue. I mean, my sense is we still need to resolve whether those things are the way to do it. My argument is they can find $48 million in savings. We will help them do that however we can best do it. I'm not sure any of us are inclined to say absolutely that you're going to release all the 21-year-olds, and I don't know that the department's intending to do that, and so that's why I think it's you want to, speak for yourselves or not? You want to let me continue to do so?
And when they're doing that, maybe they could, my concern is that the proposal basically would indicate that juveniles would be released on their 21st birthday back to communities, and regardless if you've got parole services or something else available to monitor activities. That's where the big concern is, and how they're achieving the savings.
I don't think that's the proposal, Department.
As structured, the original proposal would have resulted in everyone over the age of 21 being released, regardless of their offense, with no parole supervision. However, we have come back on that and said that we don't intend for that to happen. We would only apply this prospectively, but that would obviously change the savings amount.
Well, I think we need a sense for that. I'm not sure it has to change the savings amount, but I don't know that we have the population sort of numbers that we need and this sense of what parole services might cost. I mean, I think you're right to keep parole. And Senator Dutton, part of that would be mitigated if, in fact, it's prospective in the conviction sense of the word as opposed to in the I turned 21 sense of the word. So there may have to be two levels of proposals, one that says, are you, in fact, I mean, right now, they can be released at 21 or 22 or wherever they're found to be rehabilitated under the law if they are they're not adult convictions, right?
That's correct.
So there's some discretion already for the department to do that. The bigger question is whether when you turn 21, this would apply to any existing population. I'm not sure that's the intent. And so people are working on the language.
Well, okay, and the other concern, but this provision, the way I understand it, still provides that regardless of the parole board would concur with the release. That's part of the problem.
The 21s.
Yeah, and then also, too, doesn't this also eliminate the time add-on with regards to
Well, we don't have to do
disciplinary
that.
action.
We're acknowledging that the department has the authority to do that, and they will use it.
So that's not going to be part of this, telling
Well-
them they can't do it, or, because right now that's
No, it
what my
doesn't say they
understanding.
can't
that
do It doesn't say they can, it's what they can do today. They can already do that today in terms of the time ad thing.
But this eliminates it, right?
No, it just says we're acknowledging that there will be some savings from them doing that. We acknowledging that they can do that, and,
But the savings is going to assume that they're doing it, right?
yeah. Finance, did you want to?
I think that we have submitted revised trailer bill lease to address the issue of the 21, 25-year-old issue. We know that there's further work, and we think looking to the subcommittee process would be helpful to finalize. There was a number of issues that were brought up in the hearing about age and when services would be ceased.
Yeah, it seems to me that the logic is going to be, Senator Dutton, I appreciate you voting no today. I'm willing to accept the savings and try to keep working with finance to make them real. I think you may have to treat the 21s as folks who are prospectively convicted. Part of your problem will go away as soon as you start moving the 18-year-olds out. Anybody that's an adult that's going to be moved out under the 18 policy will never become 21 in juvenile, so it won't be a problem. And basically we're talking about children under the age of 14 who are not convictable as adults, who at some point will become 21. That means they would have served a minimum of 7 years. And consistent with what, 48 states, even your favorite Texas does this. I don't think anybody else, there's only like 3 or 4 states in the whole country that keep people up to 25 anymore. So the question is, how do we do it prospectively and not complicate our life with folks who were previously committed under the understanding they would be there until 25? Is that a fair explanation? Senator McLeod?
Yes, I wasn't here for the juvenile portion of this when we talked about. What about the add-ons for the statutory, the add-ons that they do for juveniles that adds a lot of money to it?
Well, that is assumed in these savings numbers that they will administratively be not doing as much of that as they have
Okay,
been.
because my understanding that it adds a lot of money and they add on for things that you and I would
They're
consider.
petty.
Yes, petty.
Basically. Yeah, that was the discussion, and that is assumed in here. It's not that we have to act to do that. The department has the authority to do that, but it does assume that they are changing their internal policies in such a way that they will not be doing as much of that as they have been.
How will we as a Senate oversee that too?
Through the subcommittee.
Okay.
They will come back to us with real numbers and how it's working before this season is over in June.
I am understanding.
And you are on that subcommittee,
Yes.
so there you are. Okay. Senator DeSaulnier and Senator McLeod will be watching you carefully with Senator somebody, Harmon, I think. Yeah. Okay. On a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 3 vote, we will adopt those savings and leave it on call. It is not, well, a 6 to 3 vote. It would remain, it needs 2 more votes to be adopted. The Immigration and Customs Commutations. Members, this is really just recognizing what the governor told us last fall he was going to do that he hasn't done. It's a matter of scoring and trying to hold the governor's feet to the fire to do what he said he would do in terms of creating savings. This is finding ways to turn people over to the immigration authorities more expeditiously than is now done so that they might be deported according to existing federal law. Senator Huff.
Yeah, for Department of Finance, do we really expect to score $182 million in this?
Well, our budget, the Department of Finance projected a $13 million savings in the budget year through this process. So there would certainly have some issues with, I think, the...
Well, last year, your number was the 182. That's the number we're using. That was the number you insisted that we put in the budget in the current year. So our question is kind of why aren't we living up to that, since that was the savings you told us you could get in June or July or September or whenever we passed a budget last year?
I think we've discussed this as part of an overall comprehensive package. That was what was proposed, given that there was a smaller package passed through the legislative process. Reevaluation of those inmates who would be eligible for consideration for commutation has resulted in a lesser savings estimate.
Well, you haven't done any, so our concern is, our sense of the $182 million, just for members' benefit, is an 18-month number, not a budget year number. And given that the theory was that you could even do it that much in 12 months, which, giving acknowledgement to the fact that things didn't pass. But this was not one that required legislative. This is totally within the discretion and the ability of the governor to do on his own. There was the package had nothing to do with this. SB 318 had no relationship to this issue. This is a question solely of, finding the appropriate folks and deciding whether it's time to turn them over to immigration, what, when, and how. And since we've gotten sort of no feedback on why it was the governor's proposal last year, and there's been sort of no action on it, the idea was to say, we expect you to do something, and if the number changes in May because you did something and you now have a better sense for it, then fine. But not in the budget year only. I mean, should be doing it now if you're going to do it. Senator Huff?
Yeah, I'm just going to weigh in. All of that aside, I fundamentally have a problem with the policy of just saying we're going to shortchange their incarceration here, send them across the border, which has repeatedly demonstrated that it's porous in spite of the border fence. So they'll just be back here, getting back into our criminal system, because I think they're part of our 70% recidivism rate. So whether they're released on this side of the border or that side of the border, we're going to be dealing with them again. And so I have a real problem related to public safety on this. And by the way, I don't think we will score the savings just because we've got to put them through the whole process again.
Well, the screening process, it ought to screen out those who would be the most likely to recidivists. I mean, that was the way the policy was proposed last year, it was for folks who were nearing parole anyway, and would be among those who might otherwise be released, and in any case, they're not being released into our streets, they're being released into custody of the immigration authorities. So it's an awkward thing. If we do this, I have one request that's sideways to this, but if we're going to do this, the governor of Baja California was very clear when he was here last fall that he would really like to know who these folks are before somebody drops them in his neighborhood. Senator Wright?
That's what I wanted to...
But they don't give them any information right now when they send them across. Senator Wright?
When we're looking at the savings here, are we taking the cost of incarceration and subtracting that for everyone that we send? Is that how the $182 million is arrived at?
It's just the marginal cost that we save. We're not spending on these folks.
But about how many people does that represent? Because that was going to be my next question.
I think it was 8,500. 8,500 in the last May's proposal was about 8,500 in ADP would no longer be in the prison system, and that's what generated our $180 million savings.
Let me see if so 8,500 people represents $182 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Welcome to the prison system.
But is that? I just want to make sure I understand. So
on an average daily population basis. Yeah.
But the concern I have how you score it. I mean, I don't have a pencil, but the marginal cost may not bear out. I mean, we use around a $40,000 or $50,000 number. What is I don't have
We're
a calculator.
in the $22,000 range. When the legislature adjusts their budget for population changes, that's about the margin that we use. So that's how it pencils out. We publish an average number for information, but it's not used in budgeting.
Right.
The only time that we use that number is when we make our SCAP request.
Right.
We use that average cost because it's such a large number. We talk about actual overhead that we can get at. And so with respect to this particular proposal, there's some interplay with our federal fund SCAP.
So it's about $22,000 a head for the 8,500 people that you move.
Something like that.
21,400.
Right. Okay.
As opposed to the full 50,000, and depends on if any of them are sick, then it's 100,000. So okay, moving on. On a 2, 4, 6, 7, 2, 3. Oh. 8 to 2. Oh, thank you very much. That's what I was looking for. 2, 4, 6, 8 to 2. On an 8 to 2, that measure is adopted. Subject on call. All right, Commission on State Mandates. The proposal here is to suspend and defer those mandates which were suspended and deferred for the current year, extending what we did in the 9-10 budget into the 10-11 budget year, thereby saving $232 million and bunches of headaches for local governments. Anybody? Oh, but excluding the local recreational background check. We talked about that one, members. This was the one, criminal background checks for local recreational programs. Other than the others on the governor's list of things to be extended, that was the one we wanted to take that one off the list and look at it further in subcommittee. We could see if there's a way to deal with it, but initially I think all of us reacted a little bit negatively to that. Senator Huff?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I might submit that one of the things we ought to be looking at is crime victims' rights. You've scored that, or it's scored $580,000 cost. The governor of Baja already wants to be notified when they're released into his area, and certainly I think our residents would like to know when they're released in our area as well.
So it's a mandate with respect to
crime victims.
Information notice?
Yeah, it's a notification.
Right. Okay.
So it might be, if we could pull that one item out and also refer that back to the subcommittee for more detail, we could support the rest of it.
LAO, you got any thought on that one? Can you? It's a notification by the state to victims, or does anybody know anything about that one?
Unfortunately, I don't have detail on that mandate, but perhaps when we come on back with the local recreation area, we can also come back with a recommendation regarding that particular mandate with subcommittee.
With that amendment, we can pull out the crime victim rights notification mandate and the local recreational background check mandate. And the balance of this, so it'd be 232,000 minus.
Yeah.
Oh, this is millions. Okay, 232 million minus 500 and something thousand, right? Whatever it is.
It'd be the 232 minus the $3 million for the local recreational
No, I think
areas.
we already.
Minus
That's in the 32. Okay.
Minus the
3.
1.2 million for the crime victims' rights.
Oh, the crime victim rights is 1.2 million.
Yes, that's my numbers.
Okay.
Well, we had it at 580, so maybe, but whatever you say it is, but
It's the notification only. Maybe there was another one in there.
No.
Well, why don't you take a look at the whole thing then? Whatever it is, we can bring it all back.
Basically, we have two. You're correct that it's about a mandate that's about $500 million on a yearly basis. But if we want to keep that mandate alive for next year, we have to pay all the bills that have been accumulating to date. And so there's 2 years worth of bills.
All right, so 232 million minus 3 million minus 4.2 million to hold these two, the local recreational background checks and the crime victim rights notification, for further discussion and hopefully resolution of delay, change, something in subcommittee. On that basis, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 0. The measure is adopted and remains on call for members who are not present. All right. Is there any objection to adopting the trailer bill language for the Office of Administrative Law, allowing them to move their bill their services to departments? Hearing no objections. Senator Ashburn, you're good. Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 to 0. Approved on call. All right. Employee compensation. The recommendation number 1 is the 5% reduction to department personnel costs. Recognizing those savings, there already is an executive order. The only thing I'd ask, and I think folks are working on this, is trailer bill, or budget bill, however is appropriate, to create some sort of priorities and ask that everybody bring plans for where these reductions will be made back to subcommittees so that we can acknowledge that the savings can and should be done, but it's sort of the same problem as the fish and game that was raised earlier, is when and how you're going to do this. Some people may have some differences with. I understand the Assembly yesterday thought lots of people bought lots of unnecessary cars. We'd rather not do that and provide direct services. I think the essence of the language question is keep these cuts as far away from direct services as possible, keep it to headquarters as much as possible, keep it to extraneous things like the $75 million the Assembly found yesterday in cars and things that are unneeded as much as possible. And so however we word some language to create priorities and ask that the departments, as they come up in subcommittee, bring proposals. I know they're working on those now because of the executive order, that those proposals for each department be brought to the subcommittee so that members might have an opportunity to find alternatives to things they're not think might be higher priority. That said, is there any objection to adopting that one? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. My numbers keep moving around. I have to count every time. 9-0. Adopted on call. The second item, member, is just the operating expense and equipment associated with the previous action. It really conforms. Hearing no objection, 9-0 on call. And the third one is the request to delay prepayment of post-employment benefits. The governor was trying to prepay something. We don't have enough money to pay for what we owe today. I'm not sure why we would prepay something on a 9-0 vote. The number 3 under the reductions of employee compensations, the governor was trying to prepay retirement benefits for folks before they're due. But it's a great idea, except we can't pay the bills we're owed today, which is subject to the Medi-Cal check right discussion.
Are we also
it's a great idea.
Are we also going to be taking a look at pension reforms and things like that at the same time? I mean,
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think during the, it's not something that I think we could cover in the special session, just given our time constraints, but I think there is lots of discussion out there, I think in policy committee, as well as perhaps in budget committees, some discussion of pensions should be had. But we're back to the same problem. Lots of discussion of pension could be had. Did we have the ability for the Department of Personnel Administration to bargain with employees? I know they're trying to have some of those meetings, but there is some difficulty with trust from our employees after the governor reneged on the contract they signed last year. So
would that be my understanding that we'll probably actually spend a little bit more time on that for the next year's budget?
It would be for the budget year. You can't do anything in the current year.
I understand.
And all of it's really about future years. I'm not sure there's much you can do because they have not. There would have been opportunity for savings in the current year even had there been negotiated contracts. Mm-hmm. Given that we have 21 bargaining units with no contracts, out of 20, or 23 out of 24 have no contracts, and the 24th contract is up in July. The opportunity to do that is waning, but there's certainly opportunity for it, and there's always opportunity to adjust some things by law, but the best opportunity for pension savings is in negotiations with employees that haven't occurred.
Well, except if you're going into a second-tier type retirement system, that really doesn't have anything to do with existing employees, so I'm not so sure how much of that.
But it also can be bargained.
But I'm also sure that you want to start bargaining with them as far as us determining what we can afford to pay in the way of pension. That's the reason I'm suggesting I wouldn't lock it in strictly to just contract negotiations. We ought to actually make a discussion on that, just like we're talking about budget reforms and some of the other things. I think we need to take a review of the whole thing. Most of us are committed, I would assume, to we really want to make sure that the people that need the services the most are the ones that are getting those services, and if the rest of us all have to make sacrifices or changes, then so be it. But I think we're trying to always make sure that the most needy get the services that we can provide.
Well, new hires.
Pension, that's going to be part of it.
Senator Huff?
Yeah, new hires would be coming in on a recognizing what the terms are. So there's no negotiating necessary there.
Yeah. In the past, that has been bargained, and it has occurred in that fashion, but it's been controversial back and forth. And right now, we shouldn't be having any new hires, so there's that. But it would be, I'm not sure it could be budget year savings, but it might be, and it's certainly worth discussion. Also, some of the questions of spiking in 1 years, and there's a lot of pension issues out there that haven't been resolved over time. Years of service, we all live longer, so we end up getting pensions longer. Should we work longer? I don't know. Everybody but legislators gets pensions, so it's an unfamiliar concept to me, but I'm for it. Okay. On that basis, 9-0 on this, obviously subject to further discussion, subcommittees, and in policy committee. I'm presuming there will be some bills on these issues during the year, and I know Senator Correa has had some discussion of it already. So, all right. Moving on, final item on the agenda, finance. This one, members, is something that has come up since our public hearings. I don't think it requires a lot of public discussion other than to allow the Department of Finance and the Office of the Chief Information Officer to present it. Apparently, they have determined that based on the reorganization that we did of the Information Technology and the Office of Information Technology last year, they believe an additional $140,000, $140 million in $140 million, better all the time, in savings can be achieved, and I think they may need to bring some detail to the subs. But finance, you want to?
Catherine Amon, Department of Finance. Yes, we started $100 million in savings in current year 9-10 under this control section. That $100 million, to the extent we can achieve that through permanent savings, continues into 10-11, and we capture an additional $40 million in savings.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. Anybody have any further questions? The detail, I take it, of that plan will come to the subs as they move along to subcommittees, starting when we start regular budget process in whenever, March. Senator Leno?
I think I understand how it grows from 100 to 140. Does that then grow in 11-12 as well?
Yes, it grows each successive year across multiple fund sources, including obviously the general fund is where you're most concerned, but it grows across all fund sources.
And would we expect it to grow by another $40 million?
It grows
in
by
11-12.
It grows by approximately $40 million. It's, I think, $41.6 million in 11-12, and then about $15 million after that. But it's $2.9 billion general fund and special fund over a 6-year period.
Very good. Thank you.
2.9 over 6 years.
Yeah, one more question. Are you on schedule and getting the $100 million?
Yes, we are. We have specific breakdowns for all the departments and agencies.
Thank you.
Good. So we'll look forward to seeing the more specific information in the subcommittees, but we will accept today the notion that this is a good idea. 2, 4, 6, 8. I think I'm back to 10. 11. How did that happen? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. On an 11-0 vote, that measure will be adopted. On calls for any member who may wish to add on. All right. Now, members, there's a few more things that I just want to raise that I think are things that we may need to take up tomorrow, and I just want to make sure everything has been publicly sunshined, as it were, of issues that will come up. We have not, you will notice, taken up the gas tax issue. That's still kind of out there, and people are trying to see if there is a way for us to adopt something along the lines of the governor's proposal around the gas tax swap. LAO Finance, I hear we're making progress on our cash management language with the Controller's Office. We would hope to see something tomorrow. Is that a realistic expectation on our part?
Jason Sisney from the Legislative Analyst Office. There have been a lot of discussions. I'm not sure what the timeline is from Finance, Controller, and Treasurer on presenting information. It does seem to be moving more in the direction that you requested last week with some more specificity, but unsure when they will have that available.
Okay, that's good. All right, so we will look forward to looking at that issue tomorrow. They're trying to do the flexibility language. We're still, I think, in the same place. We're not quite sure the controller will need it, but we want to make sure they have it at their disposal by having acted quickly this month in case it should be necessary.
With regard to March and April, we are increasingly confident that the state does not have a serious cash flow problem, though the controller and Finance may need to take some actions. They probably already have the authority to do it to get us over over that hump. The far more serious problem is with 2010-11 in the summer, and there may be proposals that relate to that that you may want to consider in the special session. The market is quite sensitive to the state's cash problems, and the state may have difficulty marketing infrastructure bonds this summer without providing the state greater assurance of its ability to have at least some basis of a cash flow plan over the next year. In addition, local governments and school districts do need certainty as early as possible about the cash flow changes that might need to be put in place. So that might be something that you want to consider in the special session.
We may have to consider some more. Well, special session may be over by next week, but we'll see where they go. But we can always enact urgency measures in March and whenever such things come forward. But to the extent we can give the controller the flexible authority to do what they need to do within parameters, then I think everybody would like to see that language and enacted in special session as soon as possible. All right, so that's one issue for tomorrow. Senator Huff, I know you had one issue. We want to, we want to let people know what these issues are. Right. If there is paper to be distributed, we will get it to staffs and members on any of these issues so people can be prepared to vote on them tomorrow. So, Senator Huff?
Yeah, my issue, you may recall last year, AB 672 allowed local transportation agencies to front the funds for projects related to Proposition 1B and then be reimbursed once bonds were sold. Well, we're in an interesting situation here where we have projects ready to go, but we don't have state bonds ready to release. And so what I'll be distributing to you and I'd like to discuss tomorrow is a mechanism, as we did for that last year, which would release some Prop 116 funds. And I know at least one project ready to go in my district that would generate about 2,700 jobs. And it would be no cost to the state. It's just a matter of giving that authority, and then they get backfilled later on.
Okay. We will all look forward to the jobs. We're for all of those projects. So in that same vein, I want to distribute to folks and suggest, I have learned from many of our port districts throughout the state, there was some Homeland Security money that, again, was delayed by virtue of the bond problems last year that had a deadline in terms of when it needed to get out. We need to extend that deadline and allow those projects to move forward. Right now, they can't finance them because they've been told, their deadline is too soon and they didn't have the money in place. If we move that deadline by 1 year, then those projects can get moving as well, and those are for Homeland Security funds in port districts throughout the state. One more along those lines. There's apparently some ERA funds. Remember, we had the hearing members on a lot of the ERA money and getting it out. There are some Recovery Act funds for energy efficient and conservation block grants, which need to be spent by September of this year or revert back to the federal government. Nobody wants to see that happen. And it appears that our community colleges have 47 energy efficiency projects that are ready for construction that can use those funds. So we will be suggesting that these funds be awarded to the community colleges for those 47 ready projects, which will also save money in the community colleges in the end because they're energy efficiency projects, and that'll save on their ongoing costs. And we have one more. Members, finally, 3 years ago, the Ed Fund appears to have some bidders who are serious and finance is on the verge of potentially awarding a contract. We are going to suggest some language that would provide preference or priority to those who would maintain and expand employment opportunities in California as opposed to out of state. And we will distribute that language over the evening. Has anybody else got any other of those kinds of issues? Staff, did I get all of them? That's the only ones I'm aware of. Obviously, if there is a gas tax proposal, that language will get around as people get it.
And for those of us who were out for part of the, do you want us to add on, and if so,
yes, please. Actually, there's a couple of items where I need people to add on immediately because we don't have a quorum, and after we did not have a majority, and those, and then I'm only going to go through the ones that need that, and then you can add on with the secretary for any that don't. Tomorrow we are upon adjournment of session, whenever that should be. So, and since Friday is at least a check-in and possibly session day, shouldn't be too much of a problem keeping people here if we get stuck till noon. I'm assuming we'll be out of session by 10 or so, and that, whatever discussion. These are the only main issues I know, and there may be a couple more that appear more ready by tomorrow that were from the original list. If they do, then we'll take those up. It's kind of cleanup day. Pardon? I think so, as far as I can tell. I mean, yeah, it's okay. Members, just first of all, the DNA penalty assessment. Call the absent members.
What's the number on it?
Page 3, the Department of Justice item. Call the absent members.
DeSaulnay. Lowenthal. Maldonado. Padilla.
Okay, that measure now has 8 votes. It is adopted, but I will leave the roll open for everybody's benefit on all measures that have already been adopted. That had 8 votes or more. I will leave the roll open till noon. There's a couple more, perhaps, Senator Simidian, I think. The general fund reduction to Fish and Game members, page 4, if I could have a little quiet so people can keep track here. Page 4, Fish and Game reduction, unallocated, subject to subcommittee review of specific areas in which the reduction would be taken. It currently has 7 votes. Call the absent members.
DeSaulnay. Lowenthal. Maldonado. Padilla.
That measure now has 9 votes. It will remain on call till noon. All right. Let me see if I have any others that don't have enough votes to pass. Wait, you can add on to everything. I just want to make sure I get through all the ones that did not have sufficient votes to be adopted. I believe that's all of them. Is that?
DJJ.
Oh, okay. The Department of the Department of Corrections, page, there it is. Page 7, item number 1, the juvenile justice, the scoring of savings on juvenile justice, subject to further discussion about how to achieve it in the 21-28. Everybody agreed that the over 18s they can transfer, that they have authority without us doing anything to do time credits. There's some discussion about how to deal with the 21 to 25 issue. That will be ongoing in subcommittee, and on that basis we adopted the savings. So if that's okay. That measure currently has 6 votes. Call the roll. Alquist.
Aye. Maldonado. Padilla. Simidian. Walters. Okay.
So, okay, that measure now has 8 votes?
Yes.
Okay, it is adopted and will remain on call till noon for add-ons. Is there anything else?
Nope. I think
You see that
everything else
doesn't
passes.
have 8 votes. Okay. That said, I will ask Secretary to remain and accept all add-ons that are received by 12 o'clock noon. I don't want it to stay past noon. Appreciate everybody's patience and expeditious hearing. We'll see you all tomorrow. The hearing is adjourned. We're on call till noon, and then we will adjourn.